All right, let's pull back the curtain on something we all just take for granted, our jobs. We're going to dig into this idea that's so deep in our culture we don't even see it anymore, this belief that we all work freely. So stick around because we're about to unmask a huge myth. So let me just ask you this right off the bat. Is your job a free choice? I mean, really, a truly free choice. It sounds like a simple question, but the story we're about to unpack shows a reality that's way more complicated and honestly, a little unsettling. At the very heart of our economy is this powerful idea, the myth of the free laborer. It's a story we tell ourselves that the job market is this fair and open place where we all voluntarily agree to sell our work. But what if that's just an illusion? A really well-crafted story that hides a history of force. And this quote from Karl Marx it nails it. The idea is that our acceptance of a 9-to-5, of wage labor, it isn't natural at all. It's been conditioned into us through education, tradition, and habit, until it feels as normal and inevitable as gravity. So how on earth did we get here? Well, to find the real origin of the modern worker, you don't start in a factory. Nope. Our story begins way before that, out in a field. This is where the whole foundation for wage labor was built, hundreds of years ago, through a massive act of theft. Just look at this. The difference is night and day, right? Before this thing called enclosure happened in England, a ton of people had a real measure of independence. They used shared lands, the commons, to grow food, graze animals. They could survive without a boss. But then, that land got privatized, fenced off. And just like that, subsistence turned into dependence. Autonomy was swapped for poverty. And for millions of people, the only choice left was wage labor. And you have to understand, this wasn't some random accident of history. It was totally necessary for the system to work. This process created what we now call the proletariat, a whole new class of people who were free in two very specific ways. They were free from owning any land or way to survive on their own, which meant they were now free to sell the only thing they had left, their own labor. Okay, so you've pushed millions of people off the land, but that's not quite enough, is it? You have to make sure there's no going back. And that's where the state came in, with the full force of the law to basically make being independent a crime. This is where the law becomes a weapon. Suddenly, if you were homeless or jobless, the victim of all this, vagrancy acts turned you into the criminal. Master and servant laws meant that if you broke a work contract, you could go to jail. And in the colonies, it was even more blatant. Things like hut taxes and pass laws were designed specifically to shatter self-sufficient societies and force people to work for the colonizers. Let's just zoom in on the hut tax, because this is a masterclass in social engineering. Imagine this. You live off your land, you're doing just fine. Then a colonial government shows up and slaps a tax on your house that you can only pay in their special currency. Well, how do you get that currency? There's only one way. You have to go work for a wage, on their terms. It's dependency, manufactured out of thin air. So when you put all these pieces together, you get a system that's dressed up to look like freedom, but it works like force. The sources we're looking at call it contractual feudalism. That choice to sign a work contract, it's not much of a choice when the other option is jail time or starvation. The consent part, it's just a performance. All right, so you've got people physically cornered and legally trapped, but the final piece of the puzzle is the most brilliant and maybe the most sinister. How do you get people to not just accept this new reality, but to actually believe it's natural? You have to get inside their heads. You have to engineer a new kind of person. And man, what a change that was. Before factories, life had a natural rhythm. It flowed with the sun and the seasons. You worked till a task was done. But the Industrial Revolution brought in a totally artificial rhythm. Your life was now chopped up by the clock, the whistle, the bell, into little blocks of time that didn't even belong to you. The historian E.P. Thompson had this incredible insight. He said time itself changed. It went from something you just passed to something you spent. It became a commodity, just like everything else. You could say the factory's greatest invention wasn't the steam engine. It was this new discipline of industrial time. So how do you train an entire society to live like this? You start them young. The Prussian model of mass schooling, which spread everywhere, was perfect for this. Think about it. Bells telling you when to move, sitting in neat rows, a rigid schedule, and above all, obedience to authority. The school became the perfect training ground for the factory. It produced a workforce that was already broken in. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, this is all interesting history, but what's it got to do with me today? Well, here's the kicker. The argument is that these systems of control, they never actually went away. They just evolved. They got quieter, harder to see. In a way, the factory never really closed. I mean, just look at this side by side. The factory worker from back in the day and the modern gig worker. The similarities are kind of spooky, right? The human boss is now a faceless algorithm that tracks your every move. You have to provide your own tools, your car, your phone, so all the risk is on you. And that foreman watching over your shoulder, he's been replaced by constant 24/7 digital surveillance. There's a name for this. Ongoing primitive accumulation. It sounds complicated, but all it really means is that the original process of separating people from their own means of survival, it never actually stopped. It just looks different now. It evolved from fencing off fields to creating dependency on digital platforms. And that brings us right to the heart of it all, the great fraud. You take a system that was born from violence, from stealing land and criminalizing poverty, and over generations, you manage to rebrand it. You convince everyone that this system is actually about choice and freedom. The economic necessity that was created by force is now sold to us as economic freedom. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. We are told constantly that we have the freedom to choose our work. But if the alternative to making that choice is being unable to pay your rent or buy food, how real is that freedom? When survival is on the line, what does the word choice truly mean? It's a question worth chewing on. Thanks for tuning in.